The Liberation of Sundrian City. Chapter 34. Smile from the streets you hold. Goresh gripped the handles of the carriage harder than ever, partly out of regret over his actions and partly due to the carriage being heavier than ever. 6 barrels he had managed to squeeze in, as much as he could fit, as was ordered. Remy sat atop the carriage at his usual post, eyes darting about nervously. He wasn't his usual charming self, but merely a close approximation of such, for fear was primary in his mind. But he tried, nonetheless, smiling weakly to the onlookers as they trundled down the city straight. "Just a little emergency expedition," he chimed, his voice slightly higher in pitch than usual. "Important mission, couldn't possibly wait." Important mission indeed, Goresh thought, a feeling of disgust sinking to the pit of his stomach. At around the midway point, a child came to Goresh's side, walking along with him, a skip in his step. 2 more joined. "You are the Goresh beast, aren't you? I know you, Goresh beast." Goresh first thought to ignore them, but then thought better of it, considering there was every chance he would never see the children of Sundrian City again. He nodded and tried to eke out a smile, failing miserably, the result being a gnarled curl of his lip. "Ah!" screamed the child. "Don't kill me, beast! Don't kill me!" And with that, the child proceeded to attack Goresh about the legs, slapping at his thighs and giggling all the while. "Yeah, don't kill us, you stupid monster," said another child, joining in on the attack. Goresh flushed with anger and thrashed his head in an attempt to intimidate the children, but they only laughed. He stomped his feet and shook his legs as he walked, but still the children attacked, laughing more and more wildly. "Kill the beast!" cried the boy. Another copied, and soon they created a chorus, cheering "Kill the beast," as they struggled with Goresh's powerful legs. And then, as soon as it had come, the anger dissipated, and Goresh found himself doing something he couldn't remember doing. He was laughing too, a voiceless, breathy laugh. He stopped walking, and ignoring the curious heckles from Remy, he set the carriage down for a moment. "Goresh, what is this?" snapped Remy, a small amount of terror sneaking into his words. Goresh bent down and grabbed the child who had been so bold as to attack first, hoisted him up and set him on his shoulder. "Wow!" the boy cried, and the other children squealed with glee and feigned terror as Goresh took the handles again and continued down the city straight. "Oh, very well," smiled Remy weakly, trying to regain his composure. "Always the clown," he chirruped to the onlookers, who laughed along all the same. The rest of the way, Ramil Kolwich struggled to get a word in to the crowds, for the boy riding Goresh's shoulder cried out to everyone they passed. Look at me, everybody, I've captured the killer beast. I'm the master of Goresh." "That's Goresh," said the wiry young archer. "Yes," replied Tanner Senior, "it is." They were lying on the roof of a small barn that belonged to a pheasant farmer, spying down the city straight. Guards were speckled along the streets, all up and down the city, rising in density towards the gate to the outside world, where a congregation of men stood idly about. 2 elephants paced by the either side of the gate, wandering along the grasses and the farms that lined the wall, then returning every few minutes to the gate in the centre. The black armour and mass of Deimos could be seen at the gates, talking constantly, pointing, yelling, ordering. He was in war mode. There was no shaking him. There was no reasoning with him. People took their orders without even the thought of argument. From their vantage point, they were able to hear him yell occasionally, when really riled up, but they were never able to make out the words. Further into the city, 2 more elephants wandered up and down the straight, one in the farming district, the other closer to the palace. Tanner silently wondered if it were even possible to take on 4 war elephants with only a handful of men, let alone to take on the army of Sundrian City. What's he doing? Is this it? Is this our cue? Tanner squinted into the distance, watching for a clue as Remy and Goresh slowly made their way along. "I don't know," he admitted. "So what do? We wait." Butch shook abruptly from his dream at the sudden flood of light. The princess dozed on, her head once again nestled to his shoulder. "It's me," came a whisper from Cretus. Come in," he whispered back, and Cretus entered the room, lugging with him a steaming jug and a parcel wrapped in an old cloth. "Just more bread," he said apologetically. Thanks. What news? Cretus straightened, a gloomy look on his face. Yes, about that. Goresh and Remy have been spotted walking the city straight. They appear to be leaving the city. Our men are standing by, but we don't know if we should make a move, or when. They are growing anxious. Understandably, said Butch. Cretus nodded. I've got to fight too. I have a squadron to lead. Yes. So, I don't know, I might not. I understand. Butch had been determined to remain still, to allow the princess to sleep, but now he was conflicted. He carefully removed her from his shoulder, sitting her up straight against the wall. She stirred and squinted into the light. Are we going now? She said gingerly. Not yet, sweetheart, said Butch. Just some food being dropped off. A little longer and we can leave, I promise. She nodded, her eyes closing as she did. Butch stood and held a hand to his friend Cretus, who clutched it tightly around the wrist. Good luck to you, my friend, Butch said. And you. Every time they crossed paths with one, the guards would shoot curious looks at the carriage, and Remy would smile and nod and say something reassuring. Goresh would stare straight ahead, willing the guard to go away with all his might, and this system seemed to be working so far, although not without taking its toll on Goresh's nerves. At the markets, they had moved past the first elephant patrolling the city without a hiccup. They had seen him and chosen to walk down the opposite side of the market area, and the man riding the beast had not taken any notice of the happening. Now, as they reached the farming district, they approached the second rider on patrol, and Goresh stopped a moment to take the child from his shoulders. He gave him a run-along sort of pat on the head, and the child dashed away, giggling and punching the air as he did. Good thinking, he heard Remy say quietly behind him. The man on the elephant had long since spotted them coming and began trotting his beast towards them. Going somewhere, Remy? He asked. Yes, I certainly am. Very important expedition. He coughed, clearing his throat as if it were a matter of importance. The man nodded knowingly. I understand. Just so you know, Commander Deimos is on a real warpath. You will have to clear this with him at the gates. Just be warned. Ah, yes, mere protocol. Thank you. He waved them by, and Goresh heaved the cart onward toward the gates. And sure enough, as they approached soon after, Deimos could be seen stubbornly awaiting their approach, a stone-cold look of menace in his eyes. He stood in formation, 3 men to his either side, and all with arrows pointed to Remy. Goresh stopped the carriage as close to the toes of the commander as practical and set it down. Ramil Kulwich climbed down and moved to address the party. Deimos said nothing. Hello there, Remy said, trying in vain to sound casual. All happening here, isn't it? Deimos ignored the question. I presume Emperor Frigg knows about this little outing, then? But of course, emergency mission, that's all. Very important. It wasn't true. Remy had deliberated on telling the Emperor about his plans to escape, but decided in the end not to. He figured if he were to ask, there was always the chance that Emperor Frigg would say no. Not asking just seemed to be cleaner in the end. Less risky, he had thought. Yes, of course it is. Funny though, Deimos said, a look of cruelty in his eyes. I didn't receive a crow from the palace about any expedition. Oh, well, I am sure that Franklin just forgot. Or maybe the rebels shot it down, he invented wildly. Yes, perhaps. You are probably right. Very good, Remy smiled. Jordan, send a message to the palace to confirm the expedition, Deimos bellowed over his shoulder. As Jordan scurried away to fulfill the duty, Goresh flinched and his heart sank. Very good, Remy repeated, the smile on his face now entirely feigned. Goresh loosened the harness around his waist, wanting to untether himself from the carriage. But he stopped himself, and with a pang of disgust, reversed the action, tightening and buckling it up once more. It hadn't gone well at all for him, and a tear of frustration rolled down his cheek at the pain of what he needed to do. And with that, he walked to Ramil Kulwich, the carriage dragging cumbersome behind him, and without hesitation, for he couldn't afford to second-guess himself, he grabbed Remy around the neck, snatched the thundersword from his belt and held it to his jaw. What? Remy screamed. The 5 remaining guards were stunned, too shocked to move. Deimos, however, snapped into action, drawing his sword and pointing it to Goresh, who stood behind Remy, using him as a shield. What are you doing? Demanded Remy, his voice utterly panic-stricken. Goresh, release him now or die, said Deimos, who, despite having jumped to arms flawlessly, was just as confused as the rest of them. He can use it, cried Remy. The Thunder Sword. He can use it. Don't move. Leave us. He can blow my head off. Deimos stood his ground, unsure of what to do. Goresh backed up and then, forcing Remy along with him by the throat, he set off forward, toward the gates, the carriage still dragging from his waist behind him. He walked wide around the guards, their arrows now drawn and pointed at him. Don't do anything, Remy said, his voice quivering as he spoke, his eyes closing in fear occasionally as Goresh forced him towards the gates. Goresh hooked along the gate, parking the carriage right on it, and released Remy with a shove. Remy slowly backed away, and Goresh kept the Thunder Sword pointed at him as he did. With his spare hand he fumbled at the door of the carriage, unlatched it, and flung it open. He took a deep breath, and a look at the mountains and a silent sigh of lament left him, and in that moment he wished more than ever that he had a voice, so that he could utter one last goodbye to the city that saved him from torture all those years ago. He thrust the Thunder Sword into the 6 barrels of not poppy powder, but explosive powders, and as 5 arrows sailed through the air toward him, he pulled the trigger.